there's this book I read. In it is a taxonomy of sorts of cynics. As it turns out, cynics are not only grumpy and weird, but can also be pretty smart and deliberate. There's this whole niche even that explores just why cynics do what they do. The word cynic, as it is ordinarily used, refers to some specific kind of disillusioned cynicism. You may have heard the word be used in context to political cynics, for example, people who are tired and generally untrusting of the US's political immobility, right? But that's not the only kind of cynic out there. You may have also seen YouTube videos here and there, which cover the history of cynicism as a Greek philosophy and whatnot, which represent some of those different kinds of cynics. And then this video is about the cynics among us, the contemporary, modern types, like the disillusioned cynics, which we'll cover shortly, as well as some others and what the idea is behind their actions. The multi-headed cynical perspective is providing an example of one way, or many similar ways, of thinking about the world. To agree and contrast with your own views, what's the deal with those cynics? This is the deal. Okay, so first we gotta lay down some ground rules. The modern cynic is, what we're going with, is a person who has no faith in humanity. Hopefully that's not too much of a stretch. People being greedy is fairly common, and the understanding of that, I would think, is even more so. You know, like assuming a business owner is only in it for the money, or assuming someone's being nice just for attention. This is the premise that will bind all the types of cynics together. The difference between them then is they think, okay, so I live in a world full of self-consumed dummies. What now? The cynical community classifies their cynicism by their conclusions to this question about what to do when people suck. 4 conclusions, there's 4, each a type of cynic, 4 cynics, that's what I'm going to talk about. Okay, so this is a chart thingy. 4 types of cynics which all react to this societal problem in different ways. You got the paternal cynics, insider cynics, strategic cynics, and disillusioned cynics. Here, I want to identify each one and how they relate to each other. But I will also upload an individual video on each of these types. So if the insider cynic piques your interest, there's a little bit of historical context and an average depth dive into that specific kind, if that's what you're into. It'll all be in the description, stay tuned. Alright, so paternal cynicism. They see this world full of greed and think to themselves, this greed ought to be controlled. Ideally, all people would be good people. But since that is obviously not the case all the time, the paternal cynic suggests that the next best thing is forcing everyone to be good people. What does this look like? Well, it can't be done by yelling or threatening them, because then they aren't good people, just bad people doing good things, right? What you want is the manipulation of their intentions. We're talking guilt tripping, enticement, and coercion. You want to steer people using their own self-interest towards making better decisions. My favorite example of this may surprisingly be those SPCA commercials. Sarah McLachlan wants you to make like the arms of an angel and help those sad, sad dogs. Why I contest them to be an example of paternal cynicism is indicated by their line, "This is your chance to say, I won't stand by while an animal suffers." That's interesting. Overanalyzing, maybe, but it's not your chance to help animals, it's your chance to feel like a good person. They're forcing you to ask yourself whether you're being complicit to evil, and then making you cry. We sniff out the cynicism here by figuring that this commercial can only exist under the premise that people are not naturally good. If they were, you wouldn't need to advertise charity, right? It's a subtle guidance towards the morally good thing because we aren't already being morally good. The paternal cynic would say, yeah, that flies. So, does it fly? Some would agree that if you have something good and that you believe in it, that it's only fair to spread that good thing. While others would argue that reorienting someone's intentions like this, no matter how virtuous the reason, lowers their autonomy and ability of free choice. A paternal cynic believes that they are saving people who they exploit. Left unattended, normal people would make poor decisions. So it's up to the charities to influence your goodwill, up to fitness experts to make you want to be thinner and work out, and up to corporations to make you want to save money or time or anything else that you weren't already aware that you needed. You may not know it yet, but being influenced by a paternal cynic is in your best interest, says the paternal cynic. It gets a little shady because of the same problems political paternalism has. If you have a dictator who creates a perfect society, it's technically fine, but if the dictator doesn't have all of their marbles, it becomes an issue. So that's them paternalists for you. As we move on, the next type of cynic is going to be just about the opposite of paternal cynicism, for contrast and whatnot. This is the insider cynic. These guys also pose themselves the cynical question, okay, so I live in a world of self-consumed dummies. What now? Their conclusion is, well, this is fucking weird. I better do what I can to survive. They don't so much acknowledge right and wrong like the paternal cynic, but just do whatever necessary to keep their role in society. This saves them the hassle of hoping for a better world and trying to fix everybody. The insider cynic might often be okay with just perpetuating and taking part of the bad behavior of others. They don't see self-interest as necessarily evil. They argue that that's just the way the world works. Perhaps selfishness is just how life goes, and to reject our need to preserve ourselves would be to deny living altogether. This way of thinking would ask, why try to feign virtue when everyone is so not virtuous? If there's egomaniacs and disorder everywhere, why not learn to have a little fun with reality? Operating from within the machine, their beliefs are at the complete mercy of what becomes a viable strategy to survive. There are no consistent rules here, just a common need to adapt to your circumstances. They may love to proverbially roll around in the mud of what most people would consider the reprehensible parts of human nature. Everyone is just a filthy sack of meat and bones, so who cares? The main distinction between the insider and the paternalist is about the gravity of belief. The paternal cynic is convinced they need to save the world, and it is their mission to pull everyone else into their legion of harmony warriors. The insider cynics then, for contrast, are like, whatever dude, we're all gonna die, greed is fine. This is where I'll add two little boxes to this chart thingy. The first is called serious elitism. Elitism to me gets overused in very niche applications. And so my definition will have it referred to any time you focus on comparing people to one another. You compare, one is better, thus making a distinction between an elite and inferior class. Paternal cynicism would then be elitist because it requires one group to have more awareness than another, to justify controlling and essentially fixing them. Is it possible to have superior awareness over other people? I'm not sure, but the process of judging that will be considered as elitist for the time being. The serious side of things, then, comes from its scale and consistency, similar to the gravity of belief we just talked about. The paternal cynic follows ethics by the book, something like a codified system of how to behave and react to any situation. What's good is good, and everything is a means to that good. There can only be one answer to each situation, their way or the highway. Together, this serious elitist box represents beliefs that are very strict and create a hierarchy for better and worse. The box of serious elitism will get filled once more by the strategic cynic, but we gotta make a contrast box first. This will be flippant populism, and it's for the insider and disillusioned cynics. Flippant populism is a set of beliefs which does not have a consistent structure, it's not theoretically potent, it doesn't compare people to each other. The best description is it's a classification where people routinely go, I don't know, or just living life, or oh, I was just kidding, or it is what it is. This is the structure of the common folk. Not very serious, very situational and contextual, and generally pretty agreeable. It's hard to seriously combat these beliefs without getting struck down with the mighty, who cares, dude? These two boxes are necessary because they help to identify the cynicisms which relate to each other and which ones are kind of enemies. If you watched my historical cynicism videos, these boxes mark the age-old battle between the street cynics and the literary cynics. Not so important for this video, but good context nonetheless. Anyway, the next type will share the components of manipulation from the paternal cynic and the adaptations from the insider. Our next cynic, the strategist, is the second serious elitist. They see a world full of greed and conclude that they must navigate through these vices to get what they want. They are your Machiavellian political types, the ones who work with society in tandem to strengthen their own influence. This is the typical spy archetype, which uses their sharp wit to pull strings and meticulously plan every step towards their interests. They are highly manipulative, like the paternal cynic, but do so discreetly so as not to reveal their motives, unlike the paternal cynics who are fairly straightforward in their behavior. They're also highly adaptive, like the insider, but only in order to achieve their goals. This is what makes them so much more serious. They share with the paternalists the same absolute belief in their own values, even if that's not always represented in their actions. It's an attempt to temporarily concede control in order to win it back again later. Strategic cynics will only compromise as a means to an end. The elitist quality should also be fairly evident, as strategic cynics can be closely identified with the educated elite. Academics who utilize education and convincing rhetoric to either solve problems or to stoke the ego and garner popularity. Using their supposed superior knowledge and influence, they look to bend others at the highest level. Again, notice this distinction from the paternalist, who attempts to bend others at the lowest level, controlling the masses outright. Where the paternalist has very obvious goals that they directly engage with, the strategic cynic craftily prepares their environment for change without confronting the social order head-on. This aversion to confrontation will be more present in our final cynic as well. Our last type of cynic is back to the flippant populist. The disillusioned cynics are essentially strategic cynics who gave up. They see a world full of greed and make no conclusions at all, just a harboring of contempt, no longer optimistic to the change they once envisioned. They no longer care for what happens to the world because it's all going to shit anyway. The insiders revel in this idea of a messy world without order, while the disillusioned feel depressed and helpless to stop the vicious cycle they find themselves entrapped. Maybe they once had a more serious mode of beliefs, but seemingly countless displays of its failure leave the disillusioned too distrusting of any beliefs, institutions, or groups at all. This way of thinking believes that the powerful and elite are just idiots in fancy clothes and are no better than anyone else. No longer willing to be burned by their beliefs, they abdicate any responsibility to participate in society. Instead, they belittle others that have not had their starry-eyed idealism fall out of the sky. They employ farce and sarcasm to protect their own grievances about the loss of this pure ideology they once had. Sarcasm is an especially potent tool to avoid criticism, as to not confront the opposition directly. This is the prototypical brand of mass cynicism that forms a crowd of ineffective pessimists that are no longer waiting for a change that will never come. Anyway, those are some types of cynics. A little anticlimactic. How common are they really? Not too sure. What I do think is common is the modern cynic in general, holding the belief that everyone will naturally be selfish. And how true is that universal self-interest? Also hard to say. Definitely possible to think some other kind of way, both in terms of not being self-interested and not being cynical. Is it better to be cynical? How serious of you? Hopefully this video provided some weird stuff to think about and some definitions to identify in the world. And if you like anecdotes, be sure to check out those individual videos on each type. Okay, thanks. Bye.